Okay.
Fantastic. Well, hello, Adam.
Hi, it's nice to see you again, and it's nice to be having this conversation. And it'd be nice to put a bit of background to our this conversation in the meeting, I think. And we spoke last week actually, and we were discussing the you coming over to the UK and sharing, beginning to start to share your ideas and information. And we came up with this idea of just having a conversation about the shiatsu community, this particular subject, and how different people coming together, sharing ideas, can benefit everyone. Everyone can learn and develop, but at the same time, it's nice to have a structure to meet around. Otherwise, it can get a bit chaotic. And
Absolutely.
yeah, it's like if you invited, it's like inviting lots of people who are very passionate about what they do and say, right, what do you do? What do you do? It all just, it can, the subtlety of things can be lost sometimes. And that's why it's nice to have, oh, let's meet. And this can be the basic framework. But I think from my own personal experience, you can go to a room or a class or a group and have an idea of what you're going to say and how it's going to manifest. But until you start interacting with them and the space and where they are that day, you cannot know what is going to come out.
No, but that's the beauty of what we do, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's
There's there's spontaneity, and I think some people want to have. It doesn't really work if you try and control it too much. I can remember doing early teacher training and having to work out these timetables of how you're going to present a certain element and things like that. And then it took away the fluidity of, oh, maybe question will come up and I want to meet and answer that. But at the same time, creating a timetable helps you gather your thoughts together about what you want to explain. It's a balancing act, isn't it? And I think that's the
it
nice thing
is
about what we do.
it is. I really experienced that also teaching in different countries quite close together, right? The
Yeah.
same subject matter, right? And the same course and you come like as you said as prepared as you can. I have my slides, I have
Yes.
my visuals, I got my order.
Yeah.
But then it's a new group, it's a new country, and I always take myself back to when a client comes to see me,
Mm. Yeah.
especially with the subject matter of trauma, right?
Yes.
Because I know, the micro reflects the macro always, right? So when you're working with one person, working with a group, the
Yeah.
group is as an energy too, just like one person when they come in, right? But
Yes.
also the subject matter of trauma, because of our experience, there are certain things that I already expect.
Yes.
You know, I
Yeah.
I I expect them to happen. I expect them to come to the room with. I expect a certain type of person to respond, react, or even be triggered by something that will be taught in the workshop. I
Yeah.
expect certain experiences to happen because I've seen it so many times one on one,
Mm.
and I've seen it also in group environments.
Yeah.
And and it's again learning how to create that container, right? And
Yeah.
and
And
creating that
also,
container.
exactly. At the same time, you have an expectation, but I think what experience brings is that you can adapt if things aren't quite the same. I remember I was going to teach somewhere, and it was torrential rain, and everyone was outside, and no one had a key to get into the building.
Oh boy.
So we were standing outside, and it was just we were getting soaking wet, and this, that, and the other. And then a member of the group's mother had a key because she worked in the shop, it was a health food shop which had a studio out the back. So he had to go around to his mum's to get the key to open up. So by the time he got back, it was half an hour into the day. We were all wet, so whatever I'd planned had to change. And if I hadn't been able to change, it was, it's quite interesting. Like you say, it was like a being adjusting for one person, but you adjust for the whole group at the same time.
Yes, yes, yes.
And I wonder, you see that I think trauma is such a wide subject. Look, what is traumatic to one person is just a walk in the park to someone else. So
yes.
a member of that group could have been traumatized. They couldn't get into the room and they were going to be late, even though I was there. And everyone else thought, what a laugh. We can stand around in the rain and go and get a cup of tea. So you can't really define it's interesting. How do you start to define this word trauma? Because it's become a bit of a buzzword at the moment, hasn't it? It's
That,
lots
that
of people are using it.
that's right. I like to simplify things, but before I move into that definition, I mean that story reminds me of what happened also recently in Paris back in May actually, and
Mm.
instead of being locked uh, outside, my my assistant and translator locked a certain number of people in the space, right? And the
Oh,
rest and the
oh,
and the rest of the group went out for lunch,
oh no. And then, yeah.
which was we walked maybe 20 minutes a distance,
Yes, yeah.
and he wasn't checking his phone, and then when we arrived to the restaurant, we checked his phone, and there's a bunch of groups like, where are you? We are locked here, we can't get out. We've been stuck here. So he had to run and save them, and I said, well, this is part of the course. We're gonna traumatize you on purpose.
Yeah, it's like it was planned.
Which, and it goes back to the micro and macro experiences. And it also reminded me of an incident in my integrative center that I had with my wife for many years. We had all kinds of people come with all kinds of traumas, and also all kinds of backgrounds, including many of them were therapists working in the front lines of trauma.
Yeah,
So one day we had a very experienced and very known psychologist
yeah,
come, 45 years of experience. She
yes.
was very well known in the city, and she comes in. I'm preparing my treatment room, and all of a sudden my secretary runs in a panic, and she goes, your client is locked in the washroom, and she's screaming. Somehow the door locked on her. I don't even know how. Don't even ask me how. It
Yeah,
never
it's
happened
never
before.
locked. It's never locked before or since. It was one of
Yeah.
those things.
And I run horrified. I can hear the whole clinic can hear the screaming, right? And I run, and I talk to her through the door. I'm trying to calm her down.
Hmm.
I'm using all my skills. I'm sending her energy. Right? Nothing was working. She was getting more and more panic. Eventually, I had to break the door down, and the first thing I did is I embraced her so tightly,
Hmm.
as if she was a little girl, and just said, it's okay, I'm here, it's okay, I got you, I got you, I got you, I got you, and just started to soothe her until she went from that panic state, and started to regulate a little more. And then I took her right in for a treatment, and then she told me, her trauma. So here's someone who's very experienced, right?
Yeah,
Who's done a lot of work around it, that can still be triggered just by a
exactly.
fact of being locked in, right?
So my question to you is, how did you decide it was appropriate to embrace her when some people were at the height of their trauma, the last thing in the world they want is for someone to come and hold them. They can't accept that.
Well, it was an instinct and an intuition. Well,
Yeah.
now there's
I think that's very fascinating because you can't have on your syllabus when someone's traumatized, hug them because
yeah,
some people it would be the worst thing you could ever do.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. That's why I mean it's an instinct and
Yeah.
an intuition. The instinct is if someone is locked, in an elevator, stuck in an elevator, locked in the washroom, and they're moved to a panic attack, the instinct is to save them. Like it's a trauma that most likely happened in a child during childhood
Yeah.
where nobody came to save the person or to help the person, right?
Mm.
And that created terror. It's like they're being abandoned in their trauma, right? So that was the instinct. And the intuition is this is exactly what she needs.
Yeah.
This is exactly what she needs from me right now. And
In this
and actually I tell in many of my workshops not to hug. Like the inclination of
yes.
many therapists when there's a trauma being
Mm.
triggered or something being released is to get out of yourself and to embrace the person. And I always in my workshop as it's happening, I encourage the therapist not to do it. Not only
No.
encourage, I emphasize not to do that, not to get out of yourself and
That's
to give
really
that space.
really interesting because I believe very clearly that I believe very strongly, and the basis of my own style and development is that the first thing you want to do is can you remain with yourself when someone is that traumatized? So, can you meet the famous screaming therapist locked in your bathroom and not think, oh my God, I've failed? Can you be calm enough to listen and hear the voice saying this woman needs to be held?
Yes.
It's a very interesting, it's a fine thing to develop.
Well, it's something that I consciously had to develop.
Mm,
First of all, for myself, meaning when I was going through my own trauma healing as a
mm,
young man, even before I became a therapist, one of the fundamental things that helped me at that time and eventually not only helped me but he helped me heal is silence, being in silence, right?
mm,
And going in my 20s, I went to 10-day silent retreats, right? From the age of 23 to 29, I went to
mm.
8. And in silence, you learn how to be.
Yeah,
And you also learn the workings of the body and the mind, right? And and you also learn how to be with your discomfort, your pain, your darkness, right?
mm,
So that gave me a really good foundation as a young man, and especially as I became a therapist and attracting a lot of trauma clients right from the beginning.
yeah,
I had to learn how to be comfortable, just like I had to learn how to be comfortable with all aspects of me. I had to
exactly.
I had to learn how to be comfortable with everything that is happening in front of me.
Mm,
And again, I emphasize that a lot in the workshops because our clients are such mirrors to us, as you
mm,
know, Adam. Our clients are such mirrors to us. Everything that I've learned, everything that I've developed is because of the clients that have come to me and what they showed me, what they mirrored to me, right? So if there's a part of you that you don't want to look in the mirror, that client will bring it up.
that client will bring it. And
Yeah.
what I'm very interested in is ways of developing how to be comfortable with yourself when these things come up.
Mm,
And by exploring that, you can develop ways to help other people, but it's almost a prerequisite to be able to explore how can I help myself feel comfortable in this situation.
100%.
Yeah.
And the biggest teacher to explore that, as you know, Adam, the biggest teacher to explore that is your own journey with pain, with
Mm.
trauma, and also with the specific emotions and thought patterns that come with that, right? So you have to be comfortable with your own rage.
Yeah.
You
And
have to be comfortable with your own sorrow,
mm,
with your grief. You have to be comfortable with your fears,
mm.
you know.
It's not it's funny. Words are so interesting because
Yep.
when we say we have to be,
Mm.
it's not like you have to be or you can't do this work. It's like the closer you can get towards it, the more efficient you become. Because I personally, when someone says to me, you must do this, I have a bit of a knee-jerk reaction.
Yes, yes.
But it's so interesting in that I can tell you don't mean you have to do it, Adam,
No, no,
by how
yes,
you're
yes.
talking. And it's so interesting how words and phrases and how things are presented sets up whether someone's interested in listening to you or not.
It's true, very true. But inevitably, what I've learned,
Mm,
especially as a therapist that is consciously choosing to go deep and work with traumas, inevitably you will be triggered by a teacher, by your colleagues
mm,
in the workshops, and I see it all the time.
yeah, yeah.
And and I even forewarn it. In this workshop, these are the things that will happen. One of those
Mm,
things, you'll be triggered by a word, you'll be triggered by your partner, you'll be triggered by something that you see or don't see. Eventually, if it's either it's better to be triggered in a workshop environment with your colleagues, so there you can process it, and hence you'll have an opportunity to grow that part of you, right?
mm,
It's like I can give many examples, but the one that comes right away to my mind, uh, one of one of the therapists came to me quietly and says, I don't want to work with my partner.
yeah.
And I said, and why is that? Well, I feel so much anger and rage in him. And I said, and well, it's really uncomfortable and it affects my energy. And I said, well, this is such a great opportunity, isn't it? We can go one of two ways. I can agree to your request and change partners, and
Mm,
you'll be safe.
mm,
Or you can take another step into choosing to work with your partner, because it's nothing to do with your partner, it's to do with you.
mm.
Your
Yeah.
partner is just,
Yeah.
again, yeah,
The mirror that's held
exactly.
up. Yeah.
So this is a moment of growth for you. So you can either go back and work with your partner and finish the process, and by the end of it, you won't be the same in that aspect of you, and you would know how to be with this energy, with this emotion. So there's always opportunities for growth. Now, sometimes another incident can happen and the person is triggered and they're just not ready to grow. They're not
No,
ready to,
it's too much. It's too much at that particular
yeah,
time.
yeah.
Yeah.
And this is where, as a teacher or as a guide, you recognize who's ready and who's not. and you ask for their permission. These are this is the scenario. This is what's happening. Which
Yeah.
way do you want to go? You want to give them some options, and if they're not ready, they're not ready. Just like a client, right? If a client is not ready,
Exactly. It's otherwise only everyone would only ever come to see us once.
exactly,
Push you to
exactly.
the because there is a I believe there is an interaction within that person that can release whatever what the reason that's driving them for all these things. But the process is them discovering that it's not whether you can give it to them or not, it's whether you can present it to them in a way that they can assimilate the information.
And even giving that space for someone that is not ready. I remember in that same process, somebody else said, Mihael, I'm not ready. And I looked her in the eyes, and she had this inner conflict between, there's a part of her that knows this is exactly what she needs to work on.
Yeah.
And then there's a part of her that says, I'm not ready to go there. I'm not ready to go there. And she was
Yeah.
conflicted, right?
Yeah.
And when I gave her that, it's okay, but you don't have to. Just
Yeah.
because, these people are willing to go, you don't have to. And you
We
can
put
see
ourselves
that,
under pressure, don't we?
yeah,
To it's a goal. I've got to get it. I've got to get it. And
we're not
sometimes,
just even pressure. Sometimes it's like, it can feel like a noose, like put in a noose, especially if you're a therapist, or someone who's really committed to healing and improving yourself. And I've seen that also with many therapists and clients. Sometimes it can act unconsciously like a noose around your neck, right? And giving her that permission not to participate in that process gave her such a relief, and she thanked me maybe 20 times
yeah.
during that
And,
day.
and it's very interesting because sometimes as the practitioner, you
Yeah.
can see the pattern that's holding this all together and preventing change.
Yes.
And it's very difficult sometimes not to say, why don't you do this? And that is look, this is the Chinese medicine 5 element theory. If you do this, this will release this will interact that, and then you won't be doing that anymore. And it's like it's so interesting. The longer I practice and the more I explore this, the less effective it is actually saying that. It's you might have to hold it in your energy field to offer it to them, but it might not be a said thing.
Yeah. Well, that now you're touching on something really, really powerful,
Mm,
right? How to hold it within you, within this being,
mm.
how to embody certain qualities as a teacher or a therapist, that they say most communications happen not through conversations, right?
Mm.
A lot of the communications that we involved in between teacher and a group and one-on-one as a client is the nonverbal, right?
Yeah, and also being humble enough to accept that maybe my opinion is incorrect, and that's not the actual process and thing this person needs to find, and it's like being open to that as well.
Well, this is I always say it's a co-creative process. When clients, when they come in, I'm sure they've come to you, Adam, we heard so many great things about you. So and so said that you're an amazing healer. How many times have you heard that? And
If a partner gets sent to you or a close friend, it's very unlikely it's going to be an effective treatment.
that's why I don't treat
What brings you here? My partner told me to come. That's that's just this great big door going over the connection. It might not be completely, but it changes the whole dynamic of everything.
yes, and this is where I was going to get into. You always
Yeah,
have to have the buy-in, the permission, right? Like we are doing it together. I'm not doing anything to you. you know.
Yeah.
It's you who is going to do the work. I'm just here to guide you, to help you process, to give you the tools. And if we go in there into your trauma, this is what we going to expect. And nothing is going to be done to you without your permission
Mm.
and without your agreement.
Yeah.
And that's a key when working with trauma. It's vital.
But it's really interesting you say that because it brings back. I've just reminded me of a memory when I was studying,
Mm,
doing this releasing emotion held in the fascia, how it can, and we were just doing a very simple fascia release. Something was coming up for me, and I can remember the assistant saying, "Come on, Adam, you've got to do this now. Now is the time to do it." And that put it in there for another 10 years, I reckon.
oh no. Oh no.
Do you know what I mean?
I know
Because the
what you mean.
spotlight being shone on me, you've got to do it. Sort of like this, a horrible non-PC expression, man up or person up and do it. And it wasn't appropriate.
Yeah.
So that's influenced how I work enormously because I don't want to recreate that for someone else.
Well, that's also how I work, especially in establishing the relationship, and the connection with someone, which is all about trust and how do we establish trust? How do we establish boundaries? Those are fundamental aspects of working with trauma, and
Mm.
this is these are the two aspects: embodied trust and boundaries are the two most important things for me initially and ongoingly, but especially initially, like to give them the experience of, trust. Like, what is that?
Mm.
Especially if they're dealing with something complex. Let's say they've seen many therapists, they've tried different
Yeah,
modalities, they've spent a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of money doing it. So why would they trust you? Who are
mm.
you to trust? Like, here's another
Yeah.
guy. So I'm here, somehow I've gotten into your door, into your office. What will make you different than everything else that I've tried?
Yeah.
You know?
They're asking you to show them, but you can do it. But it's an interesting and another aspect of that is people that have studied some sort of therapy and they come to you, but they've already decided what's the best for them. And when you don't meet them with, well, you don't actually, have you thought about this? I feel as though people feel undermined with their own skill. If you suggest something they don't know about or haven't experienced, they can feel um, as though their sense of self is being eroded, and that's what's keeping them meeting the trauma. Do you see what I mean? It's
Yep.
very difficult to suggest something that they might not have thought about themselves in a way that they can make it theirs.
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be a percentage, right, of people or therapists that are not willing to go outside the box, the parameters of safety, right? That's why my first workshop is always about the protective mechanisms of trauma, right? We
Mm.
all of us, if we acknowledge it or not, operate under the premise of wanting control.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
and that
And
that creates some sort of safety, even if it's a horrible safety. It's a I call it a habit, a relation. We have a relationship habit to something that gives us a sense of safety, even when it's a traumatic experience.
100%, the habits form, the habits that are in a way are made up of behaviors, thought patterns,
Mm.
beliefs, sensations that come with that, right? And a posture that creates all of it. That can be there for years, right? That's an
Yeah,
infrastructure. That's a
Yeah,
building. That's an
that is
infrastructure.
that is your reference point of how you live your life.
That's right. And the longer you're in it, the more entrenched it
Mm,
is, the more rigid it becomes, right?
yeah,
And actually, the more sophisticated it becomes.
yeah,
But it would drain the person. Eventually, it would drain the person, and the more rigid and sophisticated it becomes, the harder the break is. That's my experience, right?
yeah.
The harder they break down, or the harder the body breaks them down, right?
Mm.
So a lot of it is educating them about, you know, that infrastructure that they've created for themselves,
Getting them to experience it. Yeah,
it
it's a very interesting thing. I remember once a course I did, and one of the phrases that came from the course is, "What is not what the person will gain by receiving the treatment and letting the infrastructure change. What do they gain by keeping the infrastructure as it was?"
oh, now you're going into something that I call the cost benefit analysis.
Exactly, exactly. It was called secondary gain
Yeah,
in this thing, and that is, as you say, that
that's a
is.
good one.
I think that's the main motivation of people not to accept or begin to explore change.
but 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 that's a tricky one. You know that movie, The Matrix? Have you
Yeah,
seen that one?
yeah.
You know, where Morpheus presents
Which
the blue pill and the red pill.
do you really want to see what's going on, or do you want to, or are you going to stay? Are you going to go and have a steak?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, yeah,
So that's the moment, that you can bring someone to see, another aspect of creating this infrastructure, right?
mm, yeah,
But when somebody finally digest, I did this to a client of mine recently, because a lot of people come to me, and they come to me specifically to work with fears, right? I have these
yeah,
fears in my life. They're so persistent, and they also show up they've come to understand, because of already the work that they've done, that some of their physical symptoms are also associated with these fears, right? And this is where I get into, the totality of fear, and this is where I give them that metaphor. Okay, if you really
yeah.
want to dive into it, I'll help you. But that means that I will give you two options. Once we see the totality of it, then you will have a choice. Which pill do
Yeah.
you want?
And you might not like everything that you see.
Oh, you won't like it at all. So this last client that I did it with, and she just did not want to acknowledge it at first. She just couldn't grasp how she could be benefiting from all of this, right?
Mm,
And I said, that's okay. It's the only way is to give it time sometimes.
mm.
and
Yeah.
and
And,
a week goes by, and I get a message from her. Oh my God, I'm on the plane for work, and I've been sitting down with this, and I feel like my mind just expands. And it's quite short, and she gave me a whole breakdown of what has happened as a
and
result, right?
sometimes that moment is, you sow a seed that the person then starts to explore in with their mind, body, spirit. Because sometimes it's not necessarily a truth, but it's something that helps them to become more who they are, and that is what the system can accept.
Yes, yes.
I think from a Taoist point of view, the objective is to just find who you are, and then resistance falls away. So that doesn't mean to say there's an answer. There's just a direction.
Exactly. Well, most people, and I love working with metaphors,
Mm.
and they stick. Metaphors are so powerful, and it's the language of the body, right? Metaphors and the subconscious. And often when I present certain metaphors, it gets, hardwired in their mind, so
Yeah, yeah,
they won't forget it. So oftentimes, I mean, when people come to us, suffering from trauma and complex things, oftentimes it's like we all have a court of law,
yeah,
and in that court of law, we are the victim, the judge, and the persecutor.
yeah,
And oftentimes the problem is we never recruit the advocate. So if you're always being persecuted, the evidence that the persecutor will always present to the judge is the evidence of suffering. Because there's a part of us that always wants justice and resolution, right? But what we don't realize when we go into that court of law, we just use the persecutors being used against us.
mm.
So it doesn't matter there if you're right and if you're just. What matters is that you're being persecuted, and because of it, you've been victimized. And oftentimes the client hasn't managed to recruit an advocate that can start to present a different case for them, with
Yeah.
different sets of
You
evidence.
you need a really good defense attorney, don't you?
We all do.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And to start to present the new evidence, because fear, which really comes from our sense of lack, which are really created by traumas, right? Will always create control mechanisms. And there you have the three building blocks of an infrastructure that you can build success on, meaning you can go out there, you can succeed, but a lot of consequences will come because of it.
Exactly. If you build the building in a certain way, it will only function in a certain way.
Yeah,
If you only
yeah.
put windows at the front and you want to go to the back, there's never going to be any daylight at the back of the building.
And it requires from the nervous system a certain state of operating too. It requires a certain resources from the body that really are unsustainable, and they fracture fundamentally what's important to us, and that is usually our health, our well-being, and our relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all very exciting stuff, and it's interesting how different therapies and different things are supporting these approaches and these ideas more and more. I think it's
Yeah, I mean, there's so much out there. When I started to work with it, and I had a center. Here's a shiatsu therapist opening up a center to work with trauma. Like, who the hell are you?
yeah.
Who? You're
it,
not
it,
even a psychologist?
it was a brave thing to do. I don't mean that in a condescending way. It's like
Oh,
this doesn't make any financial sense.
no, no. It was madness, Adam.
Yeah.
Looking back, it was madness.
Yeah.
But I really felt that was part of my journey, and I had to do it. I felt that it was a mission, and I saw an epidemic happening before it was recognized as an epidemic.
Mm.
And I remember nobody wanted to talk about trauma. To go and see a therapist, a counselor, a psychologist, you had to bend their arm. And
Exactly.
to see the changes in particular in the last 5 years,
Exactly. But
are just
well,
incredible.
exactly. Well, a good example. My wife was a professional. She's been a lawyer all her life. She's retired now. So she said, within her span of working, you could never have had a day off through stress or worry, even 15 years ago. You had to be phoning sick. Because if you just said you were stressed, that was just you were out the window. And
Wow. Yeah.
it's it's changed in the last 50.
Dramatically. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
changed dramatically now.
yeah.
Well, in a good way, but with that wave of change, it magnifies the epidemic. The numbers
Yes,
are
and
there.
then some people then use that as a card when it's maybe not so appropriate, but that's just human nature somehow.
And that goes back to the definition of trauma. What is the definition of trauma, right? And it's
Mm,
such a loaded
exactly.
word, and I like to simplify things, and especially when people come and in such complex state. And to me, it's what is it to you, Adam? First of all, what is it to you? How would you define it?
I think it's oh, this is just coming out of my head as I speak. So it's being in a situation that makes me uncomfortable to the point that I'm no longer within myself.
Very good, very good. Yeah, I like to say that it's an event that created volume. The volume was so overwhelming that it created a narrative, an interpretation
Yeah.
of how you start to interpret, others in the world, right? So often people are dealing with volume and interpretation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. This what makes some person uncomfortable doesn't make someone else uncomfortable. And I remember once talking to someone and they said, when you're having a discussion with someone, you cannot lose the discussion if you say, "This is how I feel," because nobody can know how you feel about something. And so to give the person the space to realize they might be upset or uncomfortable about something, you have to, that's their story, isn't that? That's their
Yeah,
version of the event.
exactly. But the problem is sometimes with that is if there is pain between two people, let's say family members,
Mm,
and you come to them and you talk about how you feel,
yeah,
right? And they'll tell you how they feel.
yeah,
But it ends up doing oftentimes, even with people that love each other, it just stirs up more feelings and more pain. That's that's
yes,
the
because
that's the the tricky
yeah,
part of it, right?
exactly, exactly. Because what's real to one person, that's not what happened to me. Then this, that, and the other, and it feeds a. It's it's a very interesting.
Well, it's tricky, even with an expert in the room, even with a experienced therapist, psychotherapist, psychologist in the room. In my experience, and again, working with thousands of people, going through it myself when I had to go through it, very, very tricky. It takes two beings, even though they love each other. Again, it can stir so much pain that they really don't acknowledge each other, process, and then grow from it, right? It takes two
Uh,
special human beings that are willing to be in the same, I guess, place of growth and
So
evolution.
do you think that if we're at this loggerhead of both people being, in this really strong story, a way to change that is if you personally can become, think about the situation and not respond the same way, then because they can only interact with how you interact. If you've changed, they have to change.
Well, beautifully
So the
said, Adam.
change comes internally. It's not like, come on, like I could write to my brother say, da, 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 da. I think we should talk about. That's not going to happen. But if I am comfortable with the situation, it might be that they see the situation differently as well.
That's beautifully said. How do you help them do that? I'm curious.
Well, you have to find it in yourself. Like, say for example, someone that talks to me and I find it really makes my blood boil. Okay. So
There's always
rather
that person, right?
so rather than me saying, look, you're wrong, this is all the list of the reasons why you're wrong and I'm right. If I can start to explore why it makes my blood boil, there's a possibility that I can see that that's just their opinion, and that process starts to change. And then they can say it to me, and my blood doesn't boil, and then they've got nothing to push against because I'm not pushing back against them. So it's sort of like an open-ended. It's like growing a flower from the inside. I can't. I have to change internally for it to change. And
Beautiful.
that's why being a therapist like this is such good for my own self-development. Like most therapists in the UK study not only to help others, but to understand themselves further, I think.
I hope.
Yeah, I would like to have that as well. Yeah.
But
It's
but
not
you
it's not
know,
a giving thing all the time. You can only give if you've done the a bit of taking, a bit of exploring.
but you that well, thank you. First of all, thank you for sharing that because it's so true what you say, right? Uh, but I find also, we like to hope, right? Me and you got into it because we wanted to grow and evolve.
Hmm.
But I also recognize again now that, and talking back to the theme of working with the protective patterns, right?
Hmm.
A lot of therapists, and at some point I had to acknowledge that in myself, so I'm not just judging others, right? It's all came from my own journey. Like many of us believed on some level, and this is where we go into the cost benefit analysis. You know, many of us believed on some level that if we are the therapists, we will be safe,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
It,
Right?
it it puts
If
them in
I'm
the
if I'm
power.
here in this position, I will be safe. I'll be more in control. I will have more control, right? There's and this it's not that it's a judgment
No.
or something negative, but at some point, some of us, all of us, uh, have to acknowledge that, also, right? Like
But I think it's one of the most vulnerable things you can do is to explore becoming a therapist.
100%. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, but that's the gateway to courage, right? This is where courage comes from, vulnerability, right? Vulnerability. Um, you mentioned how to deal with triggers, right? Or how to deal with someone that triggers you, or and it could be a family member, and that's such a good uh, metaphor and experience that you gave us because so if someone triggers us, and this is why I teach my clients and the therapists, like you can't get rid of this person unless you kill them. That's sometimes I even bluntly say that you can't kill this person. This person is in your life if you want it or don't want it, and you deem it as the enemy, and they affect you this way and that way. What if you started to look at them as an exercise partner, right? Someone that is there for you, just like if you had to go to the gym to get stronger, or if you were a boxer and you wanted to prepare and get better, or if you were whatever
Yeah.
metaphor you want to use, that person is just there for you to exercise with. It's not your enemy. It's a way for you to develop.
No, it's very. I can't remember the name of. There's a film about two brothers that are fighters, and
Ah,
one doesn't want to be a fighter, and one's sort of like, and they end up having to fight each other, and it
there you
was
go. There you go.
really so ridiculously powerful.
I
I'm
think I
sorry,
know which movie you're talking about. Yeah, I think I know
yeah,
which
I
movie you're
can't remember
talking
what it
about.
was called now. Anyway, we've been talking for an hour, so I don't know whether people are going to get sick of hearing our voices. So maybe we should
I
save
think
something when you come to. So the good news is that we're going to continue this conversation in person in June because you know, you're coming over to the UK,
I
and which
can't
I'm,
wait.
and so I look forward to that, and I also look forward to exploring your work and seeing how that resonates with myself.
I can't wait, Adam. I can't wait to share that space with you and others,
Mm,
and
good.
dive into the cocoon of trauma and have 3 unforgettable days that we all come out on the other side changed and different on some aspects,
And
and
that,
more importantly have tools right away that we can implement to our clients. And
and it's been really nice to discuss things from both our perspectives, and I think that's the whole secret of developing any sort of work or collaboration. It's not like this is how you do it, this is the only way. It's about having a conversation, and I really enjoyed that today. Thank you.
I enjoyed it immensely too. Thank you, Adam.
Okay. Well, I think we're going to.
We'll pause
I
it
think
here.
we're going to